What was really important for me when I first started off is I really needed to understand the classics, right? I was self-taught. It was the beginning of the movement here in Los Angeles, so there weren't a lot of people doing what we started doing. You know, there wasn't a lot of people I could reach out and talk to. And because I had no experience, I really had to grasp with whatever I could. And the farmer's market became that for me. But I still had people coming in asking for old fashions, asking for Manhattans, asking for classic cocktails because they were starting to be schooled in them. You know, whether it was from New York or places here in Los Angeles, I had to know those things. But what was great about it was, and what I loved about it is, I got to start putting my own spin on that. So I'm hoping that you'll do the same, but I just want to take something very simple and show you how to make a Manhattan, okay? So Manhattan primarily is used with rye whiskey, but you can also use bourbon. You can also use Tennessee whiskey. People use blended whiskey. So I'm going to actually use a rye today, and it also has sweet vermouth and bitters, okay? This is something that you do. It's a stirred cocktail, and just a very simple general rule. Things that are spirit-driven, like a Manhattan, you actually stir. You don't shake it, you stir it. And the Manhattan got its name, what people think, and there's all different kinds of stories, but there was a party in the 1880s in Manhattan, and it actually was for Winston Churchill's mother. And the club was called the Manhattan Club. And this is one of the cocktails that was served there. So again, it's rye whiskey, sweet vermouth, and Angostura bitters, which are the bitters that you pretty much see in every supermarket, not just liquor store. They're a rum-based spirit. Angostura bitters, very simple. Okay, so before I put any ice in, we're going to build the cocktail, and it's 2 ounces of rye whiskey. So I'm going to put 2 ounces here. And then we're going to do 1 ounce of a sweet vermouth, okay? There's dry vermouth, there's Blanco vermouth, there's all different kinds. A sweet vermouth is typically what's in a Manhattan. And also you have to treat a sweet vermouth like a wine. And what I mean by that, it is a wine-based aperitif. It has all different kinds of herbs in it as well. But what I mean by treating as wine is once you open this, you need to put it in the refrigerator. Okay, it's not something, usually I'll go to an airport, and if I go to an airport and I see that sweet vermouth on the back bar, I know there's something wrong. And probably that vermouth has been sitting there for months, and they're about to make a Manhattan with it. So that's kind of a dead giveaway. So this should always be in the refrigerator. So we're going to do 1 ounce of that. And then we're going to use the bitters. So typically you would do 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. Those come in that jar, and what I typically would do, you would take that and go back, back. I've gotten so used to just making my own bitters, having my bitters so accessible, that I'll take this, and it usually comes to about 5 or 6 drops. So I'll take that and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the next essential part is the ice and stirring it, okay? The larger the ice is, the less surface area, the less dilution you have. Someone who's going to drink a Manhattan doesn't want it all watered down. They want to taste the booze, but they want it nice and cold with a little bit of dilution. So listen, I like using big blocks of ice. You might not have access to that. You can use different ice cubes. Listen, you could literally, if you wanted to, do different ways of kind of forming big ice cubes. You could take a balloon, you could take a plastic bag and put water in and freeze it, and then you have something that's kind of like a big cube, because all I want to do is chip away some big chunks to be able to stir this. So I'm just going to chip away at this because it's easy and I know I can get some big chunks there. And I love how the ice goes flying everywhere. And also, you probably should just cut it like you normally would a block like that. And if I can cut this probably 1 more piece in half, it's probably absolutely perfect. Watch your fingers. But listen, you can cut ice ahead of time. Okay, so I'll put that in there, and then we're going to stir it. If you're not used to, or you haven't gotten to the point of stirring that yet, you can always turn it around like this. You can always use a wooden chopstick or another chopstick, because the whole point is what you're trying to do is stir it. You're trying to get that dilution. And what I like, again, is you can see that condensation is starting to form on the outside. That's how I know it's getting chilled, okay? So it's real simple. And then I'll just strain it. And typically a Manhattan is up. You could have it on the rocks. It's rare that I see somebody have it on the rocks, but you could have it on the rock. This is usually goes up into a coupe or a martini glass. And what's great about that is you see how that Manhattan, it's still clear. There's no ice chips in there. It's clear. It's cold. And this typically does get garnished with what's called a true Luxardo cherry or Marasca cherry. So that's a type of sour cherry that grows in Italy. They make a liqueur, a maraschino liqueur out of it, where they take the sour cherries, the branches, the pits, everything to make it. These are so delicious. They are not drenched in alcohol. They're actually just a special syrup, probably some kind of honey combination and so forth. But they're really delicious. These are so good if you want to put them on ice cream, anything like that. But typically you'll take like one cherry. And I grew up with this as my grandmother. They had sour cherries in the yard, and they would make it, and this was called cherry liqueur. And we used to put this on vanilla ice cream, and it was absolutely incredible. This is the closest that I've had to my grandparents' cherry liqueur. So we're going to put that right in the middle. And you know what happens too? Sometimes there's a little bit of syrup that comes out that kind of like permeates the drink. So this is the classic Manhattan. I just want to show it to you for a second so you can see. So it's a classic Manhattan. It's cold. It's got the cherry at the bottom, which is going to taste great because it's going to be, when you're ready to eat it, it's going to be drenched in that Manhattan. But the biggest thing for me is when I was starting to learn these drinks, it was like, how do I take a Manhattan and get a Manhattan drinker kind of into my world? And I remember, I was reading about the five senses. They talk about sweet, sour, well, they don't call them senses, they call them flavors and tastes. So sweet, sour, spicy, bitter, and as we all know now, the umami. And the umami is what caught my eye. It's like, okay, this is the taste that people don't really talk about. And I literally just looked at it and said, umami, Parmesan cheese, soy sauce, shiitake mushrooms. And it was just from seeing them, like, I'm going to take shiitake mushrooms, I'm going to put them into bourbon. And I did that. I remember it was really close to me doing what I'm doing. And the cocktail geeks started to come to my bar. And I remember this guy, hey, can you give me a Manhattan? I gave him this, and he goes, that's the best Manhattan I've ever had. So all I did was, you have to use fresh shiitake mushrooms. You take shiitake mushrooms, and I have a whole video on infusions and how you do it. And this one is pretty simple too. So I just have a little one to show because I'm always going to have different things. So you're going to fill the shiitakes. You don't have to cut them up, but you're going to fill them about 3/4 of the way and then just fill it with the rye whiskey and let it sit for a week. You can over-infuse it. You can leave the mushrooms in there. Listen, it's cool when people come over to still see the mushrooms or the ingredients in the jars, okay? I'm straining them back in bottles. I'm doing events, but it's cool for people to see that. But my point is you would do the exact same thing with 2 ounces of the shiitake mushroom bourbon. It has been a long time since I've tried a Manhattan, but I'm going to try a Manhattan for you, okay? Let's see how I did. This is not a drink that I would drink a lot of, but I appreciate the flavors. It's a perfect drink. If you were, you had that long day and you needed that one drink to really catch you up and mellow you out before your meal and before you're going to have people over or go out to see people. So it is a perfect cocktail. Very well balanced. And again, the most important thing is do what you want to do with it. You could actually take the sweet vermouth out and do 1 whole ounce of Cynar and make a Manhattan with that. So the Cynar would actually take the place of the sweet vermouth and the bitters. Cynar is that artichoke liqueur that's made from artichokes. I use it a lot. There's some videos that I have it. I make a coffee drink with it. So you can actually substitute the vermouths, you can substitute the alcohols, but again, I just can't stress enough all the time, do what you want, do what you have, and have fun with it. Cheers.